Hey, this is Kieran, Coach's Corner Chats, and joining me is Dexter Davidson. Dexter, where are you at and what are you up to?
Hi, yeah, thanks for having me, Kieran. Really appreciate it. My name's Dexter from Leicester in England. Um, I guess my day job, I'm a teacher, I teach sport. So I guess it would be what would maybe be high school, I think, for you guys. So my guys are all 16 to 18, 16 to 19, that kind of age range that I work with. So that's my day job, if you like. And then around that, I'm a football coach, soccer coach. And I've done all sorts really that I'm sure we'll get into. Worked most recently in the women's game, in the women's senior game, with a club called Loughborough Lightning, which is tier 3 here. It's the third tier of women's football here, working with their development team. And obviously at the moment we're in the off season, so I've got kind of nothing on, having some downtime, having some time to get away, some time to switch off. But that's me really, yeah.
What was the experience working with the ladies, even though tier three, but it seems like the game in England continues to grow, especially on the female side.
Yeah, I mean, for me, this was probably my biggest jump, if you like, in terms of coaches, a real eye opener, a real kind of a learning curve. I did 2 seasons there. I'm not going back next season, just kind of for a whole host of circumstances, kind of nothing to do with the club at all, or anything like that. Just purely personal circumstances. I made that call at the end of last season, but yeah, I had 2 really good seasons there, and it was fantastic for me. The program itself, although they're a club and they're operating kind of within the tiered system here, they were based out of a university, so based out of Loughborough University. So had a lot of players who were students, some guys that are working and things like that around it, but a lot of students, um, which was pros and cons. But for me, the access we had in terms of pitches, we'd get a full artificial pitch for an hour and a half twice a
Mm.
week, which I can't speak for you, but over here that is tough, and that is, that's, you're very fortunate to be in that position. Kind of access to equipment wise, pretty much everything you could want. Kind of go grab it out the store and crack on with that. And then obviously the kind of multidisciplinary support we had around that. So access to performance analysis and video analysis software, things like Huddle. All of our games are recorded for me as a coach to be able to go back and watch that and clip it up and use it to talk to the players or use it to inform a session, was just out of this world for me. And obviously, the players had kind of their own support around that in terms of lifestyle and performance and stuff. But for me, that was a big jump. Again, that comes with its pros and cons. There was a lot of positives from that really helped me develop, but also a lot of kind of other issues that then present itself working in that kind of environment. Until that point, I'd only really worked in the youth game, so the age group game. So I'd done some boys grassroots, so just amateur under 12s, 13s, 14s, that sort of stuff. And then I had a little bit of paid work in what we call here a talent centre. So at the time, obviously, not every women's club here has an academy like our boys clubs do. So talented girls at kind of ages 10 through to like 16 aren't necessarily being picked up. So something that was being put in place here was it was either called a regional talent club or an advanced coaching centre, or they've now been renamed emerging talent centre. I think they've been renamed now, but essentially they were just centres that girls that were identified as kind of performing and excelling in their age group were brought in, and they would still play for a club and their local club and with their friends and that stuff, but they would train additionally with us throughout the week, and then we have a kind of a games program and fixture program around that as well. And that was really good as well. That was kind of my first step into a slightly higher performing environment, if you like. And I was really privileged to work with some excellent players in terms of for their age group really excelling. So from that centre with us, again, if they excelled within the centre, they would then be invited to regional camps, and then through that into then like national camps, and then that was kind of their pathway into essentially the England talent pathway. So
Hmm.
one of them since then has now gone on to represent England at her age group, kind of under 16, under 17s from that pathway. So that's kind of the level of players you're working with from kind of under 10, say through to under 16. And that was a really nice opportunity as well that I did for about 3 or 4 seasons alongside that.
How has the experience of being a teacher as well as a coach, how have they complemented each other and helped you in terms of your development?
Oh, massively. Yeah, 100%. There's so much that's interchangeable, and you take from one environment to the other, because essentially at times, coaching, whether it's football, soccer, or any other sports, ultimately you're teaching the game, you're teaching the fundamentals. So a lot of the pedagogy and the science and the cognitive side of things that underpin teaching just transfers across to coaching. And I was into coaching, before I was employed as a teacher. So the experience I had from that going into like teacher training and things like that was like really, really kind of felt like it gave me a bit of a leg up and a little bit of a head start. I knew how to kind of to work with groups and to have like aims and objectives and how I was going to work towards those, and designing practices and sessions and things. So a lot of those kind of core skills I felt like I already had like a bit of a leg up on. But even to now, like kind of, I'm 4 or 5 years into teaching full time, probably kind of 7, 8 years into coaching. So I started quite early, relatively speaking. Still feel like I'm learning things in one place that I'm taking over to the other. And you could say a lot of the skills you develop and the things you look at and the things that underpin that are just completely transferable across the two. I mean, obviously, I teach sport, which is highly practical, but we have a lot of theory-based classroom stuff as well. So, being able to kind of mix it up and do that. I teach kind of coaching-based units as well, so be able to kind of impart my own experience within that is always beneficial. I'm not just hitting them with information that's in a curriculum or in a specification. Like, we can talk about my actual experience of what that looks like in practice, and what that really looks like in the real world and stuff. So they are kind of two things that just really do complement each other really, really well. And being able to kind of switch and move between one to the other. It's not kind of two distinct things.
When did the whole experience of soccer begin for you? Everybody knows England is soccer crazy or football crazy. Did you start as a youth playing? How did you get into the game of soccer?
Yeah, I was thinking about this before I came on, because I thought this might come up. Like mine's a strange one in that really I shouldn't have been into soccer at all. So I come from a family quite heavily into rugby, more so. So dad, brother, grandparent, cousins are all have been and are massively into rugby. So obviously, naturally, my dad took me to rugby initially as kind of a tot, 5, 6 years old. And truthfully, I don't remember disliking it. I don't remember being taken and thinking like, this isn't for me. I love sport. I've always have loved sport, regardless. If it's on, I'm watching it. I always got involved in everything at school. Like, I love sport regardless. I don't remember getting taken to rugby and not enjoying that. But for one reason or another, my dad then took me to my local soccer team. Again, I don't remember asking. I don't remember saying, I don't want to do rugby. Can you take me to football? I know that a lot of my friends at school at that time were more into soccer, and that's what we'd do at break and lunch and stuff. Obviously, here that is the game, really. It's what everyone kind of into. So for one reason or another, anyway, my parents ended up taking me to football, and that was it. It just stuck, really. Just kind of never playing to any sort of level. Never in any trials, just kind of with my local sides, but loving it, playing with my friends stuff, and did that until obviously I was about 16. And whilst I was at school, purely just by chance, through a friend, I started doing a little bit of coaching at the weekend on a Saturday morning, just literally helping out. I had no knowledge, no experience. Pretty much I was picking up and putting down the cones and doing a little bit here and a little bit there, but like really kind of enjoyed it. So then I kind of got into that. No qualifications of anything, just kind of helping out, like I say, at the weekends. And then I went off to what we call college here. So when I turned 16, I left school and went to do my next kind of qualification and played for my college side for 2 years. Kind of stopped playing away from that, so I didn't. My local teams kind of dissolved, and as that kind of happens as you get a bit older and players drop out of the game and stuff. Did that for 2 years, doing again a little bit of coaching on the side, some evenings, some weekends. But again, I look back on some of the things I did now, thinking, God, what was I thinking? But yeah, that's what it was. Because I still at this point like no qualifications or anything. And then when I went to obviously university here, I didn't have like a team, and I was obviously not playing at any sort of level. And I kind of said to myself, well, what I'll do then is I'll trial for the university side, and if I don't get in, then I'll probably just call it a day. I didn't have a kind of interest in playing kind of like senior amateur football around here, what's kind of referred to here as pub football, like Sunday morning. Kind of get lumps kicked out of you by hungover old men. Kind of had no interest in that at all. So I was like, okay, we'll trial for this university thing. That's going to be another 3 years of football, and if I don't, then I might just have a crack at this coaching stuff. So I trialed. I should have maybe mentioned on the start, I was a goalkeeper throughout my pretty much whole time playing football. There's about 7 or 8 of us that turned up on the first day to trial for like 1 spot, maybe 2 spots, I think. Obviously didn't, for one reason or another, because I didn't get it. So I was like, okay, that's fine. So I just started then really taking an interest in coaching, and let's actually have a look at this. So on my 18th birthday, I went and did what here is the first, at the time was the first qualification you could do, the FA level 1 coaching qualification, which at the time was kind of 3 or 4 workshops on an evening where you learn about just putting kind of practices together and some basic things. And like I say, I started that day one of that was on my 18th birthday. And did that, and that was it really. Just kind of struck up a real passion for it from there. Quite quickly then got into my level 2 after that. Then took on like my own team and some different clubs, and kind of learning more about the game. And then, like I say, before I knew it, it's like one thing to another. I got this opportunity to work on the talent pathway, which this wasn't the motivation at all, but offered a little bit of money as part of that role, which was the first time I'd kind of been paid for any sort of coaching. Still doing voluntary stuff alongside that in the evenings at the weekend. Managed then to get onto my UEFA B license from there, and then kind of into what I've done most recently from with Loughborough and the women's game and stuff. So there was kind of never really a plan it just kind of one thing just kind of led to the next, and kind of stumbled to this and stumbled to that, and then before you know it, it's like, oh, okay, this is where I'm at. So yeah, like I say, against the odds, really, I shouldn't have on paper really been involved in the game at all. And I'd like to be able to tell you how I decided I wanted to, but like I say, it was obviously my parents kind of not forcing me for one reason or another to stick with rugby. Like I say, they were dead supportive. I'll always say that I probably had what you'd want from parents involved in a sport, in that mega supportive in terms of they took me everywhere I needed to be. I always had all the kit that I needed, but they were never those ones on the side that were shouting and whatever else. They were there. They watched pretty much every game, picked me up afterwards, and there was never a you should have done this or you were this today. Like, it was just like, well done. Did you enjoy that? Good. And like, looking back, I appreciate that now as being really, really, a really, really good position to be in.
What has it been like for them, parent-wise, to see you now take that leap of faith? And kind of like you said, I don't really know why, but I just kind of followed this feeling. And now here you are working your way through your licenses. You're getting great opportunities. What has it been like for them to watch you kind of grow, and even in your teaching?
Yeah, like I like to think that they're obviously quite proud, and we have some jokes about it. My mum's quite vocal about that on like social media and stuff, and I've got an older brother who he's been through university and got a master's and done a lot of all great stuff as well. So, but I remember there's a period of time, I think there was this window where I think it was like I passed my driving test. I think it might be my level 1 or level 2, whatever it was. Did something, got some results back for this, and it's like a short window. My mum was like super proud of Dex. My brother just being like, you've got another son as well, don't you? You remember that. So yeah, I like to think that, say that they're quite proud of what I'm doing and stuff. Like I say, I got into kind of grassroots coaching, where here the kind of culture is usually someone's got a child who's like 5, 6, 7 years old who they want to start playing football, but there's no team for them. So they set up a team at their local club and they end up coaching it as the parent, and other guys get involved. Obviously, I had like none of that. I had no personal investment, if you like, in any of the voluntary stuff that I was doing. It was purely just for the love of the game, the love of coaching, and the love of like developing other people. Which again, like some of the say my parents have commented on in terms of that being quite a selfless thing, and that, you know, I don't have to be there. I'm not kind of committed to be there because I've got a child or a relative or, you know, someone that I'm close to that's involved. I'm providing an opportunity for them. I'm doing it for other people. And like I say, then qualifying and getting into teaching. So my dad was a teacher, but before me, again, I wouldn't say that was necessarily the reason that I wanted to get into that. I've never had that thought of, oh, my dad's a teacher, so I need to do that. It's maybe part of that has rubbed off on me, and you know, subconsciously, and that's what kind of pushed me down that route. But like I said, I like to think that he's quite proud, and we chat about, he's retired now, but we chat about what I'm doing and how things have changed, and, you know, I know that I can lean on him for kind of advice and his experience, because he's in the profession for a very, very long time. So yeah, like I say, I like to think that they're proud and happy with what I'm doing.
You talked about being super interested in learning constantly. Like even now, you know that I still have a lot to learn
Yeah.
moving forward. What about the leadership part, the coaching side? Like, was that something even as a youth when you were with groups that you kind of took the lead and kind of could organize others? Was that something that's kind of part of your makeup?
Yeah, do you know what I mean? Now that you mentioned that, I should have maybe said this kind of when I was giving a bit of like a run through of my kind of journey and stuff. But my first kind of like taste of coaching and leading, or whatever you want to call it, was when I was still playing. I was probably must have been about 15, maybe 16. As I said to you, the team at the time was managed by one of the other players' dads. But actually, for the second season I was there, the son like left the team. He stopped playing. And I think like the guy who was coaching just felt that he couldn't like just then leave as well. So he carried on. So to be fair to him, like his son left the team. He had, say, no personal kind of investment anymore, but he carried on with us for another year or so. But he had a job where it was quite sporadic, like shift. It wasn't like a 9 to 5. Like sometimes you had to work nights, weekends. And I remember we had one game on a Sunday here, on Sunday afternoon, and he couldn't get to the game. We didn't have like an assistant. Looking back, like this is a safeguarding nightmare. Like now, this would never be able to happen. Like, but we went to the game with like no coach. Obviously, like all the guys' parents drove them there as an away game, so like we had all the parents with us and stuff. So, you know, we were looked after. It's not like we were unattended, but there was like no like coach. And he was kind of basically like I don't even really remember the conversation. I don't remember there being a conversation about like who wants to like sort it out. Whether for one reason or another, I ended up kind of being the one on the day that was in charge. So like the night before, I remember getting my notepad out and like picking the team, like who was going to be the team and like subs. And so yeah, we went to this game. Like I say, I'm 15, 16, just like youth soccer. And it's like, yeah, this is the team today, guys. Like, but I'm playing in it as well. Like luckily I was the only goalkeeper, so like I had to play. So there was none of that like picking myself over someone else sort of thing. So yeah, I played in goal. We had like a couple of subs, and I'd pick the 11, and then I like remember stopping the game to like say to the ref, "Oh, ref, can we make a couple of subs, please?" And like I remember the opposition being like confused, like where's your guys' coach? Like what's going on here? So that was like my first like taste, if you like, of like managing and putting a team together, and like what I thought. And like I say, maybe I think that's probably where I got a little bit of the bug from. But then like looking back, even like before that, yeah, I was always quite happy to like step up for like leadership things. So, you know, I was involved in like lots and lots of my sports clubs at kind of school and stuff. You do like various like leadership academies and things like that through kind of your PE or your clubs or whatever. And yeah, always been kind of quite happy to like lead and you know take the reins on things in most circumstances, particularly in sport. I wouldn't say that was necessarily always the case, which is quite a contrast. There are other times and scenarios where I'm happy to actually be the quiet one, and I'd rather sit back and listen and observe and not necessarily feel like I have to contribute all the time. But I think particularly in sport, yeah, like I say, that's always kind of been something. It's only something you reflect on now. Like at the time, you don't see it, but like to look back now, like yeah, well, it makes sense. Like I was probably, don't want to use the word, but like destined to take this sort of path if I look back at like what I've done and stuff.
So you've mentioned working at the grassroots level, the talent ID, and then now with the tier 3 women's
Mm.
semi-pro team. Is there a certain level that you've enjoyed the most, or have you, as each one had its kind of, like you talked about earlier, there were some pros, but there are also
Yeah,
some cons types of thing. Is there a certain spot that you've kind of
yeah,
felt like this is where I'd like to be?
yeah. I think for me, definitely that sweet spot. I think was when I was working on the talent pathway, and specifically I had the under 14s. So here at that level in women's girls football, it's like 2-year age groups. So they're under 14. So some of them were they were either 12, 13, or 14. So they had this kind of like band here. And that for me, yeah, that was like the real sweet spot in that you could still kind of mold and coach them, and they didn't have kind of any set and fixed ideas or additional stuff that kind of comes with that, but they were technically and physically developed and proficient enough that you could demand slightly more from them. So what I mean, for example, I've done a lot of, I did some work, I did a season with the under 10s, so that's like the earliest age group we have in there, so they're a lot younger, so it's smaller format of the game. So I've always really enjoyed the 11-a-side format, more so. Not that I feel that we need to get, I definitely don't think we need to get youth soccer to look like senior soccer quickly. I'm not an advocate of that at all, but from purely on a personal level, I like working within the 11-a-side game and the full format. So, and also at that age group, that under 14, that's their first year of that format of 11v11. So again, it's almost like a blank slate to work with. I was chatting to, I've got a colleague that I work with in my teaching who's also a coach. And he coaches part-time at Coventry City boys in their boys academy, and he's doing the same this year. He's working with their under 13s, 14s, and he said exactly the same, that's their first year that they're exposed to full format 11-a-side. And it's nice because, like I say, it's a blank slate. They've got generally no preconceived ideas about the game and what it should look like in that format and that size, and you can work with that. And like I say, they're starting to physically develop, so you can demand a little bit more from them. They're technically a little bit more developed, so again, what you can ask and what you can expect is a little bit more, and they've got a slightly better tactical understanding of the game. So that was a real kind of nice sweet spot, I felt, where we had all that. But I would also probably add the caveat that I think I had a particularly talented group at that time before I had any involvement on them. Like if I look back at that group now and where some of them are playing and what they're doing and where they were at for their age, like that was probably quite an anomaly. So maybe that had some impact of why I enjoyed it so much or whatever, I don't know. But for different reasons, like I say, the working in the women's game had its own things. I like that, going to a game where like, how are we going to win this today? So, always working in age group, it was just always about developing the individual within the team and getting them better and trying to push them on to the next level. Working in the women's game, although I worked with the development side, so our primary goal was to get players ready to play in the first team, but we still had that on a Sunday. It was about like, how can we win as well, and kind of the tactical challenges that you face within that, and thinking about how we can counteract the opposition. Like I say, we had access to footage, so we could look at the last time we played them and what we might expect. So being able to look at the game like that in a little bit more detail, I really, really enjoyed as well. So I wouldn't necessarily say that I preferred one more so than the other. I think I probably just preferred them for different reasons. I'm excited. I haven't mentioned this season. I'm actually taking a year out. I'm not kind of committing to any clubs or teams or anything like that. Just again, I said at the start, for a whole host of reasons. Really, say my job's pretty full on. I've just moved into my first house. Kind of got a lot going on, so I've kind of made that decision this year. I'm just going to have a year out. Still kind of stay involved in the game and try and watch as much football as possible. So, but if I look to get back into the game kind of the year after, I think I would be more enticed to look at a senior environment, and try and get back into that rather than youth and development. But I guess that's why this environment was so good, because it was a bit of a hybrid, because it was senior football, but it was a development team. it kind of sat in that nice mix between like, let's try and win some games and win some stuff, because we were involved in like cup competitions and stuff. But equally, I need to develop these players to be better, to try and get into the first team and be ready for that as well. So that again, that was a nice kind of middle ground I found.
You mentioned having the colleague, the other teacher that teaches and coaches as well. How helpful has it been to have someone that's in kind of a similar boat as you in terms of weighing both of the job kind of
Yeah.
positions and bouncing ideas off of each other?
Oh, massive, massive. So, like I said, I'm really, really fortunate that where I work at Loughborough College, Loughborough and Loughborough Sport over here is like a symbol of sport. Like, if you say to anyone in this country about Loughborough, immediately their mind goes sport. So, really, really blessed that in that environment there are so many people who operate or have operated at good levels in a multitude of sports. So, they say the one specific guy I'm referring to there, say he's coaching in academies here for a little while. The guy who heads up our women's rugby program there is involved with a team that play at the top tier of women's rugby here. Someone I coached with him with the last side I was with works at the college as well, and we shared an office for a period of time. There's other guys who have been to Olympic Games, and so to have that kind of like there is just like mind blowing, to be able to sit down and speak to access these people and talk about the game and talk about coaching. So yeah, sometimes we've had things throughout the season, like kind of maybe problems we faced, tactical, social, or otherwise. So to have someone or other people that you can go to and just be like, as an objective, like third party, but still understands what's going on. Like, what do you think? That's invaluable to me, to particularly speak to someone who's like removed from your situation and your scenario. So we had a group of 3 coaches from that in that squad. So obviously we talk about stuff, but ultimately, like, you're all in there and you're all in the thick of it. So to be able to speak to someone who's kind of removed from it a little bit, but has the technical, tactical, and the knowledge of the game and everything else that comes with it is invaluable. But equally reaching out to people like in other sports. So like I say, the rugby guy, me and him chat regularly just about everything and nothing to do with coaching. Sometimes it's about a specific problem that one of us is having or facing, and other times it's just shooting the breeze about coaching, leadership, or whatever. So yeah, that's like really, really invaluable, 100%. Like I said, I'm really, really blessed to be in that kind of environment and that position to be able to do so.
You mentioned also kind of working your way through the UEFA. What has the experience been at those coaching courses? Maybe for those
Yeah.
of us here in the States that haven't been able to experience that.
Yeah, I think so. Each of them, I felt like came just at the right time to like push me on a little bit. So what we have here, like I say, the system is you got basically five levels of badges you can do, badges, qualification, whatever you want to call them. So at the time, it was literally level 1, FA level 1, FA level 2, FA level 3, which is your UEFA B, then UEFA A, and then like pro license. So obviously, pro license is people working in the professional game, and that's a long way off. That A license, that level 4, is kind of like people working in high-end academy, kind of full-time football at a pretty good level. And then UEFA B is kind of the step below that. Obviously, when I went on the level 1 at the time, it was literally like what it should be and what I felt it was about. It was to get people who were starting off on coaching but had kind of no prior kind of knowledge, or all they had was like what they knew. So again, I go back to like some of the sessions that I put on. I found myself, again, just reflecting now, putting on the sessions that were put on for me, like as a player. And there obviously was, some of them were so bad and so like outdated. I look back now and I'm like what was I doing? Like what was I doing? So yeah, go on the level 1. It's about basically putting on games-based practice, so practices and drills, whatever you want to call them, that look like the game. They're either anything from 1v1 through to like 5v5 games, 3v2s, and it was all about that, and just how putting those foundations in place. And at the time, the FA had a model which was their 4-corner model, and you had to look at your players and look at your sessions across 4 areas. So technical, tactical, physical, psychological, and then social. And it was, how do you develop players across all of those areas in your session? So it's very much like foundations. the level 2 then at the time allowed you to then just go like a little bit further. You start to have a bit more emphasis on the technical and the tactical detail within the sessions, like what you want to achieve and what that looks like and your outcomes. And then the UEFA B then just takes that to a whole new level of kind of detail, and to the point where you're putting on a session maybe to 15, 20 players, but within that you have a primary player, like a player that you're working with. Might be your holding midfielder or your centre back or even your goalkeeper, whatever it is. And you start with them, and it's described as like a ripple effect when we build out. So we're working on pressing, say, who is that primary player when we're pressing? If it's high up the pitch, maybe it's the striker, it's the number 9. So I'm going to work with them, and then I work backwards. And what do I now need the wingers to do when the striker's doing this? And then what do I need the central midfielders to do? And work backwards like that. So just looking at the game in a whole host, and it really pushed me. I'd say that UAB probably pushed me the most in terms of stretching me as a coach and my understanding and my learning. But I would say that each qualification came at the right time for what I needed at that point. I think sometimes there can be a rush to do this one, then this one, and it's like, I don't like to speak ill of people, but I will see online. Really happy that I've ticked this level 2 off. Now it's time for the UEFA B. Like already, like the mind switched to that next achievement rather than having some time to like embed what it is you've just learned and actually go away and put that into practice for a season or a couple of seasons, because there's no way you can solidify what you've learned without putting that into practice. And like, which I'm more than happy to say, like I was probably a little bit guilty of. So I applied for my UEFA B the first time. Because what I should say is the level 1 and level 2 at the time, you just paid and you booked onto it, and then you went to it when it was. The UEFA B is the first one that you have to apply for and apply for a place. So you obviously have to, a bit like a job application, you have to fill out like your experience, kind of who you're working with, why you want to do it, and why you want to get on the course and stuff. And the first time that I went for it, I didn't get a place, which obviously at the time I was a little bit devastated about. But looking back now, it's probably the right thing, because I think I was doing what I've just explained I don't think is right, where I hadn't long finished my level 2. Obviously hadn't been coaching for a particularly long time. You didn't get any feedback as to why you didn't get on it, but reflecting on it, I can probably see like why that is now. So I had another year of embedding what I'd learned, developing more, learning more about the game, and then applied for it the next year, and was successful. So kind of again, having the blessing of hindsight and being able to reflect, it was probably a good thing. I think if I'd have got on it that year earlier, it might have been too soon, because even a year later, it really pushed me. And there was times when I was like, I don't know what I'm doing here. Like, is this for me? Like, am I good enough, sort of thing? And when you chat to people, everyone has that kind of self-doubt and imposter syndrome, we call it, but that's because you're being pushed, and that's because you're being stretched, and ultimately that's how you learn and you develop. I think if that had been a year earlier, yeah, I might not have maybe got through that. I don't think I'd have been ready. So, like I say, each course and each qualification had a kind of a specific focus for a specific person on a specific point in their coaching journey. And I think it's about just getting that right and being on the right thing at the right time.
You've mentioned a couple of times kind of like when I look back at my first session, or when I look back at not getting into the B, how important has kind of self-reflection and looking back? And because you said I may have not noticed it in the moment, but now when I look back, it's why I'm where I'm at now. How important has that been for your development?
Oh yeah. So the more time I spent in the game, and then obviously in my job now, like reflecting becomes more and more important. And I don't necessarily think, I had this conversation with, I don't think reflecting has to be super like structured, or like it doesn't have to be sitting down and writing and reflecting and evaluating. Like, it can be so like informal. Like, so I used to do a thing when I was in the center. That was about an hour away from where I lived. So when I was going there, I had an hour's drive there and an hour's drive back. So like for me, that was like ideal time to like reflect. I'm by myself. I'm in the car. Like, it's fresh. I can reflect. And we had a lot of conversation like that. So I started doing a thing where once I got in the car ready to drive, I'd turn the voice memos on my phone and just start a recording and just say what I thought about the session, just as I'm driving home, just obviously speaking to myself. There's no one else there, and while it's fresh, yeah, I'm happy with how I did X, Y, and Z, but I don't think I could have done this and da da da. And obviously not for the whole hour. We're talking like 5, 10, 15 minutes max. Log that and then come back to it a few days later and listen back to it. And was that true, or is that because of the emotion, and reflect on it again? So that's kind of like semi-structured. But I think sometimes just taking moments to sit in the shower in the morning, man, just reflect and think. And like, that's the only way. It's such a cliche, but that's the only way like you're going to improve. And I think I still need to get better at reflecting. Sometimes I can be very much in the moment, like if I face a barrier or I'm perceived to like fail, I'm very much like, right, that's it, like it's done, like I'm no good. But then coming back to that a little bit later on, reflecting on it with more clarity and less emotion, is vital. And it's a cliche, but it's the only way that you're going to get better. So this time of year, particularly, like I say, I've done a lot of reflecting at work. We've had a lot of structured reflecting, both individually and like as a collective staff group, about what we've done. We like to think this year has been very successful, and the numbers and everything else would back that up. But we don't want to stand still. So how are we going to be even better next year? And same if you're in coaching, it's a good opportunity now to, over the last couple of months or so and into the next month, just to reflect on yourself, on your sessions. I think taking feedback on board as well and being receptive to that. I mentioned some of the sessions that I can't believe that I was doing. I know like one of them, like, so for example, I was working with another coach. He would take them on like a Saturday because I had like a part-time job that I was doing to kind of fund through college and stuff. So he would take them on like a Saturday. I would have them like on the Tuesday night, and then we'd both be there on the Sunday for the game. So I was putting on like these sessions on a Tuesday night, and then like the Saturday, like a couple of the players have like said, oh, we didn't particularly enjoy X, Y, and Z that we've done with Dexter on Tuesday. He's like fed that back to me, and it's being receptive to that. Right, I need to change something then, and it's not personal, and it's not like digging me out. It's just, right, that's not working. They're not enjoying that. It's not beneficial. So how am I going to change? And that's how you involve. So I think I've definitely got better at reflecting, but I think there's still room to go. But I think it's just something we can all be doing like all the time, and making it tangible as well. So not just reflecting like, okay, this didn't go as well as you wanted. So like, what are you going to do differently? Or this went well, so how are you going to continue to do that or do that more so?
You mentioned too that you have made the decision to take a step back for a year. How difficult was that? A lot of coaches, once they get in, you talk about passion and they love it. It's hard to sometimes make the right decision for yourself to say, oh, look, I'm going to focus here for now and then hopefully come back to it later. What was that process like for you?
Yeah, so about Christmas time, January time of the season just gone, I took like 2 weeks out. I was, truthfully, I was just exhausted in myself, just kind of mentally, physically, everything else. So I need some time. So just took 2 weeks out, which I really enjoyed, like the time off, in terms of just being able to just relax and unwind and have time off. Because like, for example, so what I was doing, so where I work at the college is on one side of the road, and on the other side of the road is the university where my football was based and my coaching was based. So it was really nice and convenient that I could finish work at like, say, 5, hang around for a little bit, drive round to the training facility, and then start getting set for training at 6, train through to 7:30, and that'd be home for like, say, 8, 8:15. But when you've left the house in the morning at 7:30, suddenly before you know that's a 12-hour day, and that obviously then planning and other stuff has gone into that. So not having to do that and go home at 5 o'clock and check out and switch off like was nice. But by the end of those 2 weeks, like I was ready to go back. I was like, yeah, okay, I've had that time just to rest a little bit, kind of get myself back, and I'm ready to go again now. Like, so we finished the season off, but it just kind of got to the end of this season, and it was a turbulent season in that there was a lot of movement and change within the structure, kind of coaches moving on, new directors of football, interim coaches, players coming, players leaving. Like, there was a lot of chop and change and turbulence, and it felt very hard to get settled, particularly in the second half of the season. So yeah, it just kind of got to the end of the season. I just had to think like, I'm doing this for free ultimately. Like this none of this was like paid work at all anymore. Once I stopped doing like the talent center stuff, so this stuff in the women's game was like completely voluntary. So if I'm not loving it and I'm not really enjoying it, like what am I actually getting from it? And I stuck it out like for the players because like genuinely the group of players that I got to work with over those 2 years were just phenomenal. Like awesome, just like great footballers, yeah, that was fantastic. But just like the people, the coach that I got to work with, again, we formed a really good bond, a really good relationship. So all of that side of stuff was great. But I just kind of got to the end of the season. I just thought like this, yeah, I don't think I can do another year of this. And I basically said to myself that I will not actively look for anything, but if something or an opportunity presents itself that I think is right, then I'll take it on, or I'll at least consider it. And I sent a few emails and a little bit of inquiry and being a little bit nosy, but nothing was kind of really like right. So I was like, okay, that's fine. So this is what I'll do then. I'll have a year off, and I'll see. And now at the minute, it's great, and I am loving it. I am loving the extra time. I've started getting into golf. God knows why. That's something that happens at a certain point in your life. I'm terrible, but yeah, getting to do that, spend more time at home, obviously, with my partner. Just have like evenings to do nothing or to go out or whatever. It's great. I think it will be telling when the season starts. I'll see how I don't know how I feel then when I see that people are going back, or I am seeing that people are going back to pre-season and people are making signings online and chatting about the game. That might be a little bit harder then. We'll see. But I think it's just kind of what's right at this moment in time and where I'm at. Kind of with personally, professionally, everything else. I think that's just kind of what I need now. And sometimes you just got to make those decisions. You've just got to kind of do what's right. But like I say, I've got my qualification to a certain level. I've got my experience. That's never going anywhere. So I'd like to think that in a year, maybe even 2 years, whatever, I don't know, that I'll be able to get back into the game and find a more medium ground. But yeah, no, genuinely looking forward to kind of a season out, if I'm honest. I'm going to do my best to kind of keep my tools sharp. So I've got a few opportunities where I've kind of agreed that I can dip in and out, kind of ad hoc and do a session here and a session there, just to kind of, because as you know, like stuff changes so quickly that if you did a year and did nothing, like so much would have like changed and things. So stay involved in the game. I'm a big Leicester City fan. I've been a season ticket holder for best part of 15 years now. So I'll be doing that again next year. So that'll be my Saturday afternoons and Tuesday evenings doing that still. So that's not a problem. And then just try and get out and see some local games and, like I say, dip in and out of some sessions and some clubs and just keep myself ticking over for a year, but without that kind of full-on commitment and things. And then I'll assess this time next year, like where I'm at and what I want to do and what's available for me.
Dexter, this chat has been awesome, and that is a perfect way to shut this thing down. This is Kieran with Coach's Corner Chats with Dexter Davidson, and I'm out. Peace.